What is up, everybody? Missing Lynx here with Boombox Crush. And in honor of February Album Writing Month, we are kicking off a series on workflow. So, if you don't know, February Album Writing Month is a challenge engaged in by tens of thousands of songwriters and producers every year to put together an entire album of music, like 10 tracks, 40 minutes, something like that, in the month of February. That's a lot for a producer because you're not just writing it, you're arranging it, detailing it, mixing it, mastering it, the whole 9 yards. But the videos that we'll be pumping out the next few weeks will help you along the way. And today's video is especially important because it's going to give you a roadmap that is highly optimized to minimize the amount of work you have to do and minimize the headaches along the way, right? So that you can actually get this done. So let's dive in and take you through it right now. All right, so this is a roadmap based off of what I was taught at the Producer Dojo. If you don't know, the Producer Dojo is a music production school founded by Il Gates. It's amazing, it's affordable, it'll change your game, it's great. Definitely check it out. But this has since been modified and optimized by myself and other producers to become as efficient as possible. Now, what that means is that it will minimize the amount of work that you do, minimize the amount of work that you have to undo, minimize the amount of psychoacoustic fatigue you experience along the way, and minimize the amount of heartbreak you experience along the way. So I'm going to go through all of that. So let's just dive right in. Session one really only needs to be a few hours, like 4 hours, maybe 5 hours. I've gotten it done in as little as 2. But the trick to it is focusing on the core main part. So you're going to start by gathering your main sounds. Now, when you're gathering sounds, it's very easy to be like, ooh, I like this, I might use this once, or I might use that once, right? But you really want to resist the urge to accumulate everything you might use, because then the tendency is to use tons of it, have all these ideas, and then create tons of work for yourself to do. And it actually doesn't make your track better. Usually your track will be better if your core things are as good as possible, and you don't have too many ideas that you can't make it work. Like it's either just too many hours, or it's just too convoluted, right? Or it's just too distracting from these main parts. So you're really trying to focus down on the main sounds, the most important stuff. And what there is to look for here is it should be really inspiring, like awesome stuff, right? Something where when you hear it, you're like, I could write a whole track around this, right? Because you're going to do exactly that. And if you don't have good stuff to begin with, you're not going to be able to save it later in the production process. So don't go beyond this step until you have something awesome to work with, right? But once you do, you're going to write your nugget, right? So nugget is a term that I'm borrowing from Seth Drake. He is a famous mixing and mastering engineer. He runs this program called The Approach, where they teach mixing and mastering. Definitely check out The Approach. There is also a YouTube channel for The Approach. I'll leave a link in the description. But he's been the mixing and mastering engineer for a bunch of top 40 artists like Gucci Mane, Bass Nectar, a bunch of people. So writing the nugget, what I mean by that is it's these sounds, it's, sequencing them, like the core sequences, like the core drum patterns, core melody lines, etc. And then any core automations, like the most important automations that are probably going to stick with it throughout the whole thing and are vital to the sound. Right? Nothing else, none of the random one-off details, none of that stuff, right? Just this core stuff. And then as soon as you've written that, you're going to mix this down. Now you might be thinking, oh, Lynx, isn't this super early in the process to be mixing? And the answer is yes, in the best way. Because when you mix this stuff down, you're not going to go 100% good. You're not trying to get it perfect. You're just trying to get it 80% of the way there, right? And the reason for that is you will know how far these core most important sounds can carry you, right? Like you might mix down this sound, and even if it's a little wimpy at first, now it's nice and full and juicy and you can hear all the details. You'd be like, ooh, this is good. I could have a whole section that is just this sound soloed, right? And you get that information by mixing it down early. And so armed with that information, now you can do a rough arrangement of your song, knowing how far all these sounds will carry you. And so you basically are writing your intro, your outro, your builds, your verses, right? Your drop, your chorus, whatever, depending on the type of music you're writing. But your main sections, none of the details, not transitions or fills, all that stuff will come in session 2. But just this rough arrangement of the core elements, ebb and flow throughout the song. And then you're sending it out for feedback. And again, you can get session 1 done in like 2 hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours, right? Now you're sending it out for feedback, and this is also super important. A lot of times people will wait to send their tracks out for feedback until like they're done with as much as they can. And partly I think it's an ego thing because they want to like look good for other producers and stuff, but it's really a trap because when you do that, you're like at the end and you're just hoping that they have no feedback for you, that they're just like, oh, it's fine, you did everything right, good job, right? Except for that never happens, and then you've spent 30 hours on this track and then you get feedback and then you're just like, I can't believe that they said this, now I got to go make all these changes, etc. So this saves you from that because right now you've just got this core part of a song. You tell them, hey, I've only got like the core elements of the song, a rough arrangement, and the mix is only like 80% of the way there. Please give me according or feedback accordingly. And producers will know that. And so they'll give you ideas. Like one, they'll point out the stuff that you're not hearing, like the big changes that need to make that you're not hearing, and get that out of the way early so that you can make those adjustments early while your track is so simple, right? You've only got a few parts, right? You've got the arrangement, but like nothing serious. So you don't have a lot to, mess with, right? And you're not attached to anything. You're in this space where you're still excited about making changes. You're still coming up with ideas, and they'll help feed the ideas to you for this second session. So armed with the feedback, you go into second session, you're like, implement the changes that they make on the core elements of the song, right? When it's still easy to make those changes, right? And then, start doing this stuff. So the ordering of this is a little bit less important. I like the ordering here. Subtraction you actually want to do throughout. But first, carve away space for adding new things, right? So spice is those other ideas, right? These sounds you might only use once here or there, or like the extra fillers stuff, or like these extra little bits to the drum groove or whatever, right? But it's not like your core elements, right? It's like ear candy and stuff like that. I like to work on transitions before fills because sometimes like the concept for a transition will preclude the need for a fill at that moment, and it will save you on like adding fills that you later don't want to delete, even though it might be the best decision to make the transition work as well as possible. And then once I've done all the main transitions, all the core fills, and like all the additional elements, I'll do the detailing, which is like all the little one-off changes here, like, oh, delete this drum hit, do a once-off automation here, like a little like edit there, right? All throughout, speckled throughout the track, like these little tiny bits all speckled throughout the track. And you might, again, bounce between this, but you can do this also in like 4 or 5 hours at most. And then you would send it for feedback again. Now your projects become a little bit more complicated, but you've gotten the big pieces out of the way. And then this will be littler stuff and it'll still be fresh in your mind, right? But you'll be armed for that going into session 3. So session 3 is you're then correcting all these little things, right, that have come up, both that you've heard and that you've gotten the feedback. So these last little tweaks, and you're really trying to get to rendering it down to audio quickly, right? So this is your last chance to change anything that's in MIDI and those sorts of stuff, like your effects automations and all that stuff, that when you render out to audio, all that's going to be gone. But you want to render it down to audio because it's going to make your project way more efficient. So you made it more complicated and it's going to start slowing your DAW down and stuff like that. And then this is going to simplify it again, get your processor overhead back to you. And then it's also going to let you make changes that you can't really make till you're in audio, which include audio editing stuff like deletion of like, gating patterns because you're deleting audio, or like you're stretching out and like warping your audio and abusing the warping engine and stuff like that. But it's also let you do some mix type stuff, where you can now see how long reverb tails are, and you can re-envelope those and get stuff out of the way, and clean up tails and check if stuff is in phase, that kind of stuff, right? That you can really only start doing once you're in audio. And so that will also help you prepare for the mix stage. It's good to subtract along the way here as well, but now you're at the mix stage. Now, here's one of the great parts. You started with a solid foundation and you mixed it down pretty good. When you add all of this stuff in, you're going to naturally, along the way, make sure that it's cohesive with this good sounding foundation, this core of your song, right? And so as you add this spice, you're going to do a little bits of compression and saturation and EQ and such to get it sounding solid along the way. So when you hit this mix stage, you started with a solid foundation. You added to it cohesively. So you're actually sounding pretty good. So this mix is not overwhelming where you've got like 30 tracks, right? They're all over the place, right? All the detailing and stuff that you did, none of it was mixed down. And so now it needs to be done differently. And you don't even know how that is because you got to first mix down your nugget and everything, right? It's going to save you all of that. And it's really just taking it from great to awesome, right? So this becomes way easier as a result of the sequencing of everything before. And then once you've done that mix down, right, do all the typical stuff, right? Take care of your transient response, your spectral balance, your stereo imaging, all those sorts of things. But then when you've got a good mix, a good master takes very little time as well. And then you're like 98% of the way done, right? You send it out for feedback again, and from here getting to 100% might be a while. Like it'll be a lot of back and forth feedback with your friends and producers and potential fans and everything, where they'll tell you like, and this is all these little changes at this point, right? Because you've already gotten the feedback in the first rounds for the big stuff. And if you wait till the end, if you have big changes to make after you've rendered down to audio, after you've added all these extra tracks and all this extra stuff, it's a nightmare to make these kind of bigger changes. So you've front loaded all of that stuff. So these are just little tweaks at this point, right? Because of the way that you sequenced everything. And it's going to save you so much time and effort as a result. All right, so I know I just threw a bunch of stuff at you really fast, but hopefully it made sense. And hopefully you can see how it's a path of least resistance to getting tracks finished, right? I know from personal experience that I have definitely made too much work for myself so that I'm like burnt out by the time that I'm actually trying to get the track finished, where I'm like, have put so much time in and tried to get it so perfect when I send it out for feedback that I don't want them to say anything's wrong. And so it really saves you a lot of heartache, a lot of psychoacoustic fatigue, and minimizes the number of hours that you would spend. So for February album writing month, here's the game plan. Session 1 for all the tracks in the first week, right? So I'm going to write 10 tracks, but the idea is writing 2 tracks a day just through session 1. Now, session 1 can be done in like as little as 2 hours, right? Usually it takes me more like 4 or 5, but it can be done even in 4 hours, in 2 hours. But the idea is 2 tracks a day, just session 1, send it out, send it out, send it out, right? And the idea of this is that first off, you stay in that compositional creative mind where you can go in radically different directions. You're creating stuff from the ether, like coming up with brand new ideas, this most creative space, right? And you're staying in that zone and you're not getting out of that zone, so you can stay writing. Then as all the feedback starts rolling in from when you sent it out, you prepare yourself for the next stage where you're in, how do I accentuate, make this the most of what it is, right? You're no longer going off in terribly different directions, right? You're by and large just trying to make stuff as cool as possible, add all the spice and detail and accentuations and embellishments, right? And you'll be in that zone. And then that way, if you come up with a cool fill idea or a cool idea for a transition or a cool method to build or whatever it is, like, oh man, this moment of silence here when I went and then I dropped to this, like really works. This would totally work for this moment in that song, right? You're in that zone and you can implement all those changes of a similar variety during your second sessions, right? And you just do song to song to song, right? Send it all out for feedback, right? And then as the feedback starts rolling in, you get to session 3, and then you are first in this, let's make these last final tweaks. It's mostly like a corrective kind of thing. So you're first like correcting all these last little bits, getting it down to audio, doing this last little editing and detailing and such. And then you're mostly in mix mode, right? And the benefit of that is that as you're in mix mode and you're mixing all these tracks down, one after another, right? You're able to keep them cohesive with each other, right? And it's not a lot of work. Like say if on Tuesday you mix down a track and then Wednesday you mix down a track, and something about what you do with the drums on Wednesday, the drums are just extra punchy and extra full and awesome. You're like, man, I need to go back and spend another 30 minutes on the drums in what I did on Tuesday, right? You are still basically in mix mode on Tuesday, right? So you're good, right? Like it's very easy to go back and make those changes. You're still like mentally in the space. You just recently worked on those tracks. You can get all the tracks to be cohesive together so that they sound like they belong on the same album, or at least that they all belong in your catalog together, if you're not really releasing them as an album, right? And so you're in mix mode, and then you send it out for feedback at the end of that. So the goal is session 1 for the first week, session 2 for the third week, or sorry, second week, session 3 for the third week. And then that gives a whole fourth week of buffer in case, you know, it doesn't go quite so smoothly and it takes a little bit longer. As far as I'm concerned, if I get through session 3 for all 10 tracks, then I'm done, right? Because like after session 3, right, that could be like a month where you keep sending it back, like make this little tiny change, this little tiny change, and there's like a lot of back and forth from feedback from other producers and such. But you're like 98% of the way there or whatever at that point. So hopefully this made sense to you guys. Hopefully this was useful and this will help carry you through February album writing month. I want to give a big shout out to Trap Jesus, who helped me come up with this this workflow. So he is a sensei at the Producer Dojo, but they teach a process that is slightly different. And then Trap Jesus kind of put me on to the refining of this, where you send out for feedback super early, and you mix the nugget down before you arrange, and these kinds of tweaks. And then I've kind of made some small adjustments to that. So big shout out to him. He runs a human music podcast, so check out the Human Music Podcast. There's like tons of good information there. But yeah, so I love you guys very much. I'm really excited to hear what you create during February album writing month. So definitely like throw that stuff in the comments. I'll have more videos on workflow coming throughout the month. Right? I'm going to be very busy with writing, but I'm going to get these videos out anyway. So we'll see how that goes. I'll try and prioritize it, like session 1 kind of things in the first week and everything like that, but we'll play it by ear. If you have any suggestions on how to improve this workflow, right, make it more efficient, reduce more hours of work, like avoid psychoacoustic fatigue, all these kinds of guiding principles, put that in the comments too. This is always a work in progress, and our whole community can benefit from it. So I love you guys very, very much. Keep making the world a more beautiful place through making music. Again, I'm missing Lynx. I'm with Boombox Crush. I hope you guys do amazing this whole month, and definitely throw your tracks down there. And we'll have a big party at the end, and we can go listen to each other's tracks, give feedback, celebrate, all that stuff. All right. Love you so much. Peace.